Spartans! What is your profession?
I just do eyes. It's just eyes.
Hi everybody, John here, Spartan Crafter, and today we're going to talk about eyeballs. Now I love making eyeballs. They're just something fascinating about them, and I've made a few over time. I've practiced and tinkered with a whole bunch of them, in fact. Now it's a pretty simple technique to make an eyeball. It's just perfecting it that takes a little time. Alright, I'm going to show you step by step. Now, you can make any size you want. In fact, I have smaller versions, and we're going to make this size eyeball. I've got a mold for this. In fact, I've got a few molds. Because I like... here's a bigger version. I like not having to do unnecessary work over and over again. So when I make an eyeball form, I usually make a mold out of it, so that the form itself, before I put the iris on, is just a standard size, so I know what I'm getting into and what I have. And also it works hand in hand with the iris, or the top part of the iris. That dome there is just basically a glass cabochon, which you can buy fairly cheaply in Amazon. I mean, I can't remember the exact prices, but you can get bags of them 50 or 20 or even 100, and really the price is ridiculously low for glass cabochon, and it really works well. And it works, and it's necessary to get that lens effect that the iris will give you. Anyways, and you can get, I've got a whole bunch of different sizes. And for this particular model, I wanted the eye to look unrealistic. In other words, the iris was ridiculously large for the size of the actual eyeball, because for an eyeball this size, the actual cabochon should be about this size, in that range. Okay, it shouldn't be quite that big, but I wanted an unusually large eyeballs for, you know, creature effects and weird masks and stuff, and I just like that oversized iris look. But if you want to make a more realistic eye, yeah, you're going to tone it down to a smaller one. I forget what sizes this might be. 12 millimeters. I'd have to actually measure it. Anyways, but what we're going to do now is we're going to actually do the mold for this size of cabochon, because right now the molds I have for this size, these two, are that size of cabochon lens. So I'm going to show you step by step how to make it. But we're just going to go to the basics first. We are going to keep one because we're going to use that as our base measure. Let's do it. Alrighty. And that comes out to about 3 centimeters. Oh, not bad. Okay, so what we want is to roll a Sculpty ball of about that size. So we're a little shy on material here, so let's get some more stuff. Now that we put a little more Sculpty into our ball, roll it until we get a nice round piece. Alright, and just give it a little palm roll. Alright. Oh. You take your cabochon, how to get it centered. And take your cabochon, try to get it centered. Yeah. That. And gently push it in. Just make sure that the Cabochon has sunk far enough into the Sculpty to make a lip. That's looking pretty symmetrical. Alright, so the next part is easy peasy. I like to use my tile and a slab of silicone that I use to paint with, mixing my paints on it. And I don't put small pieces like this in the oven. I just use my trusty heat gun. For small quantities, it'll work just fine. I'm not interested in baking it all the way through, since I'm probably going to make a mold out of this. Like I said, I like to make things perfectly one time and then just redo them over and over again. Okay, so here we go. And just heat it and turn it. Heat it and turn it. Don't worry about the glass cabochon. It's going to take a lot more heat than this thing has to affect it. Just make sure you rotate it. You don't want to burn one side. Now, if I didn't have this camera set up, I would just go around like this. I suppose I could still do it. It doesn't take long. You do this for a few minutes. It will harden the outside enough for you to get what you want done. Now, after we heat it up, we're going to let it cool down for a while. And we'll work on it after that. Alright, so now it's cooled off and it's ready to be used in other things. Now, while it was cooling off, the cabochon, it just fell right off. I mean, you know, couldn't ask for anything better, because right now, no matter what you do, whether you make a mold or you use this piece to make the eyeball, you want that cabochon off, as you won't need it until later. Now, if you don't want to mess with making a mold for this, if this is a one-shot deal for you, or if you'd just rather make a whole bunch of different sizes and eyeball and using the same cabochon or a different cabochon, and you just want to make a one-shot deal where you just did a bunch of them and you're never going to do it again, or you're going to do it differently next time, or whatever, then you could go right ahead and paint this and do the other steps that I'm going to do after I make the mold of it and get the... But I usually like to make molds out of all my prototypes. That way I always have a production method, you know, where yes, it came out great. Now I have that piece in a mold and I can reproduce it as many times as I like. So now we're going to make a little block mold out of this. Simple, quick, and easy. You know, first we're going to get a little bit of plasticine, because what I like to do whenever I make a mold is make a plasticine foot. And what I mean by a foot is obviously something to stand on, hence the foot, but also to elevate the piece so that the mold material goes under and makes a little lip here, so that when you're pouring the material into the mold, you can see where to stop. And also, if you want a rotocasting, you have a little lip for it to splosh up against, so it doesn't just come pouring out. My foot technique is hard learned and hard, you know, it's my foot technique is just something I've relied on over the years when I make molds. It's just my favorite method of doing it. Alright, we're going to press it down a little bit and make a little outward lip, and we're going to squash it down in place. Maybe trim it down a bit. So I want a sharp edge there. I don't want it to I want it to be distinct and know exactly where my mold should end, and know up to where I can pour. Now I could pour all the way up here and then round it off to make a rounder eyeball, or just flatten it out. Alright, so press on the foot a little bit and it'll keep it in place while I get. Now for the mold wall, pill container with the bottom cut off. Now the lid part I use to go on the floor, on the surface, because it's the flattest part of it. Make sure that you have it centered so that you have the same distance on all sides of the walls of the piece, and you just glue gun that guy down. Like the glue gun, but the only problem with the glue gun is it does take a minute for it to set because it has to cool. Try not to fidget with it much. Now for this mold, I'm going to use the. For this mold, I'm going to use the Mold Star 20. Just to make a block mold. I won't need to go very high, let's say half an inch above the surface. That's it. The Mold Star 20T has a pot light of 6 minutes and a cure time of 30. It's very short, but we're going to just do one straight pour, so making sure that you scrape the sides and get down there in the bottom. Very important, because the thicker the material, the more likely it'll stick to the sides and you won't get a good mix. It's really just concentrate on scraping every once in a while. Now I have a lot of pot life on this, so we gotta get going. And when you're pouring it, try to pour, I know you don't have a lot of time, try to pour it in a thin stream, as that will cause less bubbles to form. If you want to get a thinner stream, just raise your container as high as you can, and just, you can pour pretty quickly because the stream itself will thin out no matter how much you're pouring. As long as you're high enough, you can pour at a steady pace, but the stream itself will elongate and stretch and cause the bubbles to break and disappear. Filled up the mold, and now we're going to wait. It shouldn't take long. This stuff has a cure time of 30 minutes, so we'll be back around then and see how the mold turned out. All right.